Serious, people who did a long time, 5 years plus, in prison. What was your biggest shock of the outside world? You forget about the details of things. Like the way carpet feels on the bottoms of your feet. What it feels like to shower completely alone and without flip-flops on. In prison you have a certain number of smells that you're exposed to every day. Think of them as the first page in a book. But when you get out you have the rest of the book available. It's a lot to take in all at once. With social media and everything. There's the acknowledgement of the passage of time. When I got locked up I left a lot of friends and family behind and did 3 years on my own. No visitors. No calls. No mail. When I got out it was a trip to get on Facebook and Instagram and see how everyone I was ever close to had moved on with their lives. Having kids. Getting married. Getting fat. Losing weight. Starting and quitting jobs. Falling out with each other. Some even passing away. People think about a prisoner doing time but don't understand that the time does them. You are frozen in it. While you're stuck in a constant loop of the same day every day. The rest of the world moves on without you. When you get home, you feel left behind. It's an anxious panic to catch up after that. I did 4 years. The day I got out my uncle took me to Walmart to get everything I needed. I went off by myself to get the things on my list. First I went to the lotion aisle. I was looking at all the lotion and amp, became so overwhelmed by all the choices. Dry skin. Healing. Scented. Etc. In there I had no choices and amp, was given what I needed. Having all these options overwhelmed me. I gave my list to my uncle to get it for me. It was really hard to go out in public for a while. The first night I tried sleeping in a dark bedroom like I did before prison. But couldn't do it. My dad slept on the living room couch with the TV on. So I slept on the other couch. I needed to sleep around people and amp noise for a while until I got used to being alone again. I was surprised. Because one of the things I missed the most was sleeping in a dark, quiet room. Alone in a comfortable bed. For a long time I slept with my arm or a pillow over my head because of noise and amp, bugs. Just money in general. You have no idea how to handle money. That takes a little time to get used to. I did 6 years. My biggest shock was finding out you can't do much of anything without a smartphone. Companies don't even do paper applications anymore. For my cousin, it was the Game Boy Advance. This was a while ago, 2006 or so. My cousin, who'd been in prison for about 10-15 years, was finally getting out, so me and a bunch of the family went to pick him up. Then go get breakfast at some diner. I was just a little kid at the time. So I was playing with my Game Boy Advance while we were at the restaurant. I'll never forget how much the game I was playing blew my cousin's mind. He saw it and immediately said, "Holy poop. What is that?" Exclamation point. Look at those graphics. Oh my god. That's insane. His sister, "Are you seeing this poop?" Exclamation point to me. It was just some Star Wars game. But to my cousin, it was the future. It's actually through video games that me and him bonded a lot. I would tell him about or show him new stuff in the gaming industry and he would tell me stories about the games he would play growing up. Just got out. Weirdest thing was seeing all these damn scooters laying everywhere. My father was incarcerated from 2003 to 2016 and amp. The biggest shock for him was technology and amp. How much McDonald's has raised prices or mayo. I was in for robbery too. Mandatory minimum of 5 years. 10 months. One of the hardest things for me once I got out was making choices. Let me explain. In prison, you might have a choices for shampoo if you're lucky. The first time I went shopping for hygiene essentials was at Target. I remember being so overwhelmed by the amount of choices for shampoo and having no idea which one to get. I stood in that aisle and cried for a few minutes before I just left without getting anything. Edit. Wow. I did not expect so many responses. I am trying to respond to all the comments, but I have to go to work right now. I will be responding later. Thank you for all of your thoughts. My father was a counselor in a state prison for 12 plus years. He told me the inmates would often talk about wanting to feel their body submerged in water, taking a bath, swim, etc. There are only showers, so that feeling up being weightless, floating, submerged was something these men would fantasize about. I have done 5+ years in prison. I was mostly amazed by smart TVs, with Netflix and browsers directly in the TV. And the 4-gram internet speeds blew my mind as well. 5 years for aggravated assault and amp robbery. I was 3 months past my 18th birthday when I was sentenced. I lived in a small railroad town in south central PA. I guess one of the biggest shocks for me was how much the town had changed. The scrubland where we rode our bikes and dirt bikes is now a strip mall. My friend's driveway is now the main road through that part of town. Someone fixed up the old dive bar and turned it into a fairly popular restaurant and bar. Hell. Whole developments popped up all over the place. And while I wouldn't exactly call the changes gentrification, the town certainly has improved as far as standards of living, without ridiculously increasing the cost of living. Shock number 2 was internet access. AOL, Net Zero, Earthlink, etc. were the go-tos then, but phased out within a couple years of my release as faster access from cable companies became more widely available and affordable. Great question. OP. I don't often get to chime in on this sub. Edit. I'm blown away by the response to this comment. Thank you for the upvotes, comments, questions, concern, and support. And thank you, kind strangers, for the awards. I interned at a private criminal defense firm. The most notable shock of any of our released clients had to be one man who in prison for 16 years, odd amount because he was paroled as part of plea deal. He had a daughter who was just a child at the time he was incarcerated. And when he got out, she had just had a baby. His first grandchild. She didn't tell him about the pregnancy beforehand. She wanted it to be a surprise upon his release. I wasn't there when our old client met his newest family member or his now adult daughter. But when he came in a few months later, he still couldn't talk about the new baby without crying happy tears. He had a picture in his wallet of his daughter when she was little he brought with him to prison, and showed us the new picture of his grandchild he keeps with it now. There was this older guy who used to drive a forklift for me. He had done 10 years for manslaughter. I never got the full details because he was a good guy and a great worker, so I didn't care. He went in his early 20s and came out in his 30s. So by the time I knew him, his prison days were already 20 years in the past. So apparently, he went in and his eyesight was bad all his life. But he was too poor to go see someone about it. His eyes were never checked, and so basically by the time he got out, his eyes were completely shot and he couldn't see well at all. The halfway house he was in paid for him to see an eye doctor and he got new glasses that fixed his vision. He recalled to me that it was such an amazing thing to see leaves on trees. He said the world was all pretty much splotches and to see detail like that blew his mind. I work in jail, but when talking to a lifer who was about to go out on parole, I tried explaining smartphones, which blew his mind. Then I described Pokemon Go and he thought I was just messing with him. He got angry that I would make poop up. I wonder if he's running around playing Pokemon Go now. My aunt was imprisoned for about 25 years as a political prisoner in China. When she was released, she was just agape at the cityscape and how it had changed. The smartphones. Being able to pay by just scanning with WeChat, very commonplace there. For paying something like parking, it is very convenient. All the cars. The fashion everyone wears now compared to her closet of clothes she had before being taken away so suddenly, literally. She was kidnapped from my mom's family in broad daylight. Unannounced. In the end she took it all in much better than we all had expected. Right before the pandemic. She had just finished a 3-month vacation in Gillen with my other aunts. According to her, Gillen has changed the least. This didn't personally happen to me. But I worked for a criminal justice reform group in Florida for about a year and a half. We connected with a guy who got released from prison after 50 years. He was arrested during one of the MLK riots in 1968 and locked away for half a century by an infamously racist and vindictive judge. As you can imagine. After so much time he was struggling with a lot. But the big things were that he didn't have any ID anymore and had no way to get it. Didn't know where his birth certificate or anything was. He said it's like I don't even exist anymore. I occasionally work with people who've just gotten out of jail or prison. And if it's a longer stay, a weird thing I've noticed is how often they are enamored of things like Spotify. Like once a guy had just gotten out after 10 years and the first thing he wanted to do was get Spotify set up. He tried to connect through Facebook but couldn't remember his password. People getting out of jail are doing so much work to catch up. It's really distressing how little societal support there is if you don't have family to take you in. I know a guy who did 2-3 years I think, and I worked construction with him. I asked him, what is the biggest thing that stands out to you now that you're free? He simply said, the fact that I'm here with you but I can physically walk over there to that field 500 meters away without anybody or any walls stopping me. I remember asking a co-worker of mine. He said first was that no one had taken his car. It sat for 6 years unmoved in the street. Tires held air and battery was dead but started with a push. Second was how quickly things had gone up in cost. Rent. Food. Gas. Things like that. I spent roughly 9 years in total at a maximum security prison for some dumb decisions I made as a juvenile. Self-checkout stands at stores and wireless headphones were definitely one of those. This can't be real moments. I questioned reality. Like when you cannot explain an instance and it scares you trying to cope with. Did that really happen? That's how it felt. Writing this for a friend as he doesn't have his own Reddit account, so please understand this is not my story. Friend. Served 11 years in prison for armed robbery and not having a permit for a weapon. He wasn't sentenced with this but admitted to me he had assaulted one of the officers first on scene. I went with his brother to pick him up from prison and slowly we took it back to where he used to live, 2 hours away. He was always nervous and anxious. His words were, my biggest shock probably was how much had changed. Mum and dad live on the other side of the country. I've lost all communication with all my friends but you and generic other friend name. In a month or so I came by to ask him how he was doing. It's so weird to not have to give anyone my stuff. I don't have to hide anything or worry about the consequences if it gets found. I'm guessing he sadly have quite a rough time in prison with other convicts or even the guards. I bet you that some of them are pissed when they got out on drug possession for pot. To find out that it's legal in some states. Spent 6 years behind bars. When I got out the biggest shock was the beautiful sights and colors. I forgot how gorgeous nature was. It put the thought into my mind that I never want to go back. Because there is no beauty in prison. The beauty is on the outside. I'm glad I'm out now. And every day still taking the amazing outside world for what it is. Edit. I also am having fun with new technology. Lol. My brother served a little over 3 years but the morning we picked him up we stopped by a grocery store to let him grab some snacks. He's walking back to the car with this stunned look on his face and finally as he gets to us he goes, I felt like I was on an acid trip. I haven't seen that many colors in so long. I need to sit down. The world didn't care of our absence. I met a dude who had just gotten out of prison after 15 years. He said that his immediate shock was just seeing color. He said that everything in the joint was grey looking. He went to Walmart and was overwhelmed by all the colors he had not seen in 15 years. cousin did 5 for meth and robbery. When she came out she started crying when she saw my youngest sister was almost an adult. I drive Uber and picked up a guy that had just finished 15 years for drug charges. He had only been out a few days and thought the Apple CarPlay in my car was some type of alien witchcraft. I ended up telling him to move to the front seat and let him pee around with the system for the duration. He really got into the endless music that Apple Music had to offer. Edit for typos.
Hi there. Look, if you enjoyed the video, well, why not go ahead and hit that like and subscribe to Reddit Stories. In fact, if you want to see even more responses to this thread, well then, take a look. There's the link in the description below. And remember, show some love to those authors while you're there. And I look forward to seeing you next time.